Today's video is brought to you by Third Wave Water. This right here was my very first espresso maker, this exact one actually. And it was what took me from Keurig and Nespresso coffee to the wonderful world of real, genuine espresso. This one is the updated model of this. You can see very similar, a couple little updates here. It's called the Rok Espresso GC Pro. Now, is this the perfect espresso maker? No, none of these things are. So today in this video, we're gonna look at where this shines, where it maybe falls short, how it compares to other manual espresso makers, and if you should consider making the move from something like Nespresso into something like this. This one, I got all the way back in like 2008, 2009. So over 15 years ago. It was a gift from my dad. It still works great. Originally, it had a clear plastic reservoir up here. I upgraded it to the GC version as soon as that kit was available. And this one was sent to me by Rok more recently. This version comes in black and silver. And when you open the box, you'll see the Rok is inside. This little spouted portafilter is in here, as well as this scoop and tamp, this little dosing ring, and this little spouted attachment to go on here. And that's basically it. The basket size in here is about 49 millimeters. We'll come back to that. And I actually do have a couple upgrades here that I'm gonna use. One of them is an upgraded tamper, and the other is a pro basket inside. Not really necessary, but we'll talk about it. Now, using it is actually pretty simple. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill this reservoir up here with boiling water, and I'm just gonna let that sit for a few minutes. The basket is rated for somewhere 15 to 20 grams of coffee. I find the lower end of that is a little bit more comfortable. So I've got 16 grams of this coffee here. I'm gonna go grind it up, and then I'm gonna take this little dosing ring. I'm gonna put it on top of the portafilter here, and I'm just gonna dump my ground coffee in there. I'm gonna do a little bit of distribution, and then I'm going to tamp it down. Now, before we load this thing up, I'm going to pop the valve and let that hot water just drain through into this cup. If you want to go really crazy here, you can do that with the portafilter in. Then I'm going to put that portafilter in. We're going to fill it back up with boiling water. I'm going to put my scale under here, my cup, and I'm going to lift the arms up, let all the water go into the chamber there, and then I'm just going to slowly press down. And I'm just going to give it really light pressure until I see the first couple drips of coffee starting to come out, just like that. Then I'm going to turn up my pressure until I hit about 2 mils per second, until I have somewhere between 32 and 35 grams of coffee. That's about a 1-to-2 ratio. Put the purge cup back underneath, and I'll push any additional water through there. When you see bubbles like that, that means all the water is pushed through, and you can take your puck out and empty it out. And the taste, that is a really nice shot of espresso. Very vibrant. This one is a natural Ethiopian from Roasty Coffee here in Canada. Now, we'll come back to optimizing your shots with this thing, but if all you want to know is, does this make delicious espresso well? Then the answer is absolutely yes. However, you probably also noticed it is a way more involved process than making a Nespresso with a Nespresso machine. But the result is a lot more delicious as well. Now, if you're new to this whole thing, before we get into like the downsides, the competitors, all that stuff, don't use pre-ground coffee from the grocery store if you end up getting a machine like this. I would say the safest bet is actually not to get coffee from the grocery store at all. Find a good specialty coffee roaster, order some coffee from them. It's going to be roasted within the last several weeks. Grind it up fresh with a real espresso burr grinder. When I first started in this stuff, I used a blade grinder, believe it or not. You're not going to get a good result. You need a real espresso grinder for this thing. And the other thing that you should pay attention to is your water. Once I started paying attention to my water is when my coffee really went to the next level. I use this stuff. It's called Third Wave Water. They're sponsoring this video, but I've used these guys for years and I love this stuff. Basically, you get distilled water, you take out a little packet and you mix it in to 1 gallon of distilled water. And what it does is it perfectly formulates your coffee for the ideal taste. This one is a light roast profile. They have medium and dark roast profiles as well. There is an espresso machine profile that is designed to not only help your espresso taste great, but protect your espresso machine. I actually use the light roast on this one. Tastes great. And these guys are giving you 10% off a one-time order using my coupon and link below. So if you've never tried this stuff, you want to stock up, go for it. Highly recommend. Coffee is 98% water, so important stuff. Now, besides how good the espresso tastes, the thing that I like best about machines like this is actually how connected you are to the espresso making process. You have that immediate feedback under your hands to have a very intuitive sense of what is going on in real time with your espresso shot. And that just can help you learn a lot quicker than something like a machine with a pump where you put it in, something happens, and then you have to try and figure it out after the fact. With a machine like this, you can adjust your pressure to the feedback under your hands, save shots in real time, and really embody those fundamentals of espresso making. Now, the flip side of that is that the whole process is certainly a little bit more tedious than using an espresso machine, and definitely a lot more tedious than using a Nespresso machine. In fact, I actually encourage people not to even necessarily consider machines like this unless they're kind of half get their feet into like a new hobby almost. And if you're willing to do that, the espresso quality that you can get out of a manual lever is really good. And you're going to get that quality a lot more affordably than with almost any other espresso setup. Now, let's talk about optimizing your shot with a machine like this. There are a million ways to do this, but here's how I approach this. Now, the first thing that I'll say you definitely need is a little espresso scale. This one is from a company called Buku. It's fantastic. Really great price for value. Sweet spot here. The other thing that can be really helpful is this. This is called a bottomless portafilter. This is going to allow you to see directly the underside of the espresso basket so you can kind of diagnose what is happening with your shot a little bit more carefully. So when I'm optimizing my shots, I pop this scale in, I set it to mode 1. So it's not actually going to show me time at all. It's just going to show me the flow rate and the final weight. And then I load my coffee in this. And I take the water, which is at a boil. I've preheated it in most cases. We're going to come back to that. And I lift it up and I press down until I just start to see even beating on the bottom of that basket. Usually takes like 10, 15 seconds, maybe at the most, something like that. Then I ramp up that pressure, not even really necessarily paying attention to the number that's on the gauge here, until my scale is reading 2 mils per second flow. And then I just hold that pressure, adjusting the pressure on the arms to keep that flow rate until I have my target volume of espresso. And when I do that, I almost always end up with good shots. It is very easy, very bulletproof. You don't really need to worry about the pressure. You don't really need to worry about the time. I find I like my shots in between 4 and 7 bar. You can do higher pressure if you want, but you don't need to in order to get really great espresso. Now, besides optimization, there are a couple other things that you might want to consider if you're looking at a machine like this. Number one is overall potential brew volume. You know, this is a fixed size, so by the time you get coffee in here, you push it through, it's going to have a maximum threshold of size of shot that you can do in one pull. In my experience, I found it was, you know, somewhere over 30 grams, but below 40 grams, which is perfectly fine for the dose size. Actually, it works quite well with the basket size. But if you want to do like crazy long ratio light roast or something like that, it's going to be a little bit trickier. Same with that preheating process. That's another consideration. Now, again, that's more important. If you're doing light roasts, you want very high temperature to extract those lightly roasted coffees. If you're doing darker roasts, this is a lot less of a big deal. You might not even need to do it at all. But I will say it is a little bit more of a consideration with this Pro version. And that's because of this gauge right here, which can help you kind of understand where your pressure is at, which is good. But the mount for it is solid metal and it's right in your brew water. So provided that metal is at room temperature, when you put water in there, it's going to cool that water down more quickly, which is going to raise the importance of preheating a little bit, even compared to the non-pro version of this. At some point in the future, I would love if Rok either made available their non-pro piston for people who felt like they got the pro, they wrapped their head around the pressure, and they maybe don't need this anymore, so that you could convert it and not need to worry about that in the same way. But again, it's only really a consideration if you're trying to push the envelope with lighter roasted coffees. A couple other considerations: they have a pro shower screen in here that is actually a big improvement over the shower screen of my original Rok. I like that a lot. Now, the surface of that, it looks like silicone to me, can get a little bit oily over time with the coffee, and that can cause your portafilter to slip a little bit as you're pulling it under pressure. So you do need to clean that every so often. If you notice your portafilter starting to move when you're pulling a shot, then it's a pretty good sign that it's time to clean that. Otherwise, you could be at risk of it actually popping out. Materials and sustainability wise, these things are designed in the UK and manufactured in China. The packaging is fantastic, actually. It's almost entirely recyclable. The press itself is made from aluminum and steel. The body and arms are made out of aluminum here. And the brew chamber is made of, they call it a glass composite, really. It's a plastic glass composite. Now, the brew water doesn't ever come in contact with the aluminum body, but it does come in contact, obviously, with this brew chamber here. Rok does have some audits and certifications for their manufacturing facilities. I will drop that down there in the description. A couple other considerations: the bottomless portafilter is a really nice upgrade. This scoop tamp, I really just do not like this as a tamp. I used it for years when I first got my Rok. It's the same part, and it kind of works as a palm tamper. I just find it's not the best performing tool, which is why I ended up getting a Pro IMS basket that's designed for a La Pavoni, as well as this oversized tamper designed for that size by Coffee Sensor, also typically for La Pavonis. I do love that I can use that size of accessories on the Rok, and in my opinion, that in some respects puts it ahead of some of its other competitors in that way. Now, quick note on that basket: I found that while it did fit in these portafilters, it didn't fit with this spring in there, so I had to take the spring out. It would be nice if they could tweak that spring so I could fit those pro baskets in there a little bit more easily, but it wasn't a huge deal. I just took the spring out. Now, as far as competitors go, I think the first one we got to look at is the non-pro Rok version. This one comes in at about $279 US, while the non-pro version comes in at just over $210 US. And I would actually make a pretty strong argument for considering that one, as long as you're comfortable not having this pressure gauge here. I think there was a time where everybody was so focused on it has to be 9 bars, or if it's not 9 bars, I'm not doing it right. And the reality is that you don't really need to hit 9 bars. Anywhere up to and approaching 9 bars is going to give you a very delicious tasting result. I often go as low as 4. A good rule of thumb for me is if it feels like you're pushing down with all your might and nothing is coming out, you probably need to grind a little coarser. And if you're pushing down and it's no effort and it just is gushing out in like 10 seconds, you probably need to grind a little finer. Also, in addition to being cheaper, the non-pro version doesn't have this big metal part sticking into your brew water, so it's actually going to give you better temperature stability performance. Now, as far as other competitors, Flare is the big one that comes up in comparison to this. The Flare Pro 3 comes in at $340 US, so it's kind of another jump up above this one. And there are some pros and cons between those two if you're considering them. I really like how this espresso maker uses a traditional and standardized basket setup. That's a mark over the Flare for me. Also, I like the workflow, the action of this one a lot better. Like, it just feels very comfortable to me. Flare has a lot of more fiddly bits that you need to do. It's definitely a little bit more tedious from a workflow standpoint. I do like the preheating on the Flare, and I do prefer the way it's set up from a temperature stability standpoint as well. Overall, I really like this little espresso maker. The espresso is delicious. It has its limits, just like any other manual espresso maker. I like the way it looks. It's something that I feel like I can leave out and it's attractive. People are gonna ask me questions about it. And then when I go to use it, it's very fun to use and it gives a great result. Now, is it worth making the jump from an espresso machine to something like this? I think that's up to you, and I would love to hear from you in the comments on that one. If you're into coffee stuff, you love to geek out, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. It's probably the best way you can support what I do as a creator. And if you own one of these or another manual lever, I would love to hear your take on this whole thing. I hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.